Five Nights at Freddy's 2 just did something no movie has ever done before. It opened to $56.5 million, smashing the record for the biggest December opening weekend in history. It beat Zootopia 2 for the #1 spot, and it has the largest critic audience score divide in Rotten Tomatoes history. 13% from critics and 88% from audiences, a 75-point gap. That's not just a divide, that's a war. Critics are calling it astonishing clunky crudeness, an incoherent mess, and one of the worst horror movies of the year. Fans are calling it a love letter to the games, way better than the first and exactly what we wanted. So who's right? Is Five Nights at Freddy's 2 actually good, or are fans just blinded by nostalgia and lore? Let's start with the numbers, because they're absolutely wild. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 opened to $56.5 million domestically this weekend, $29.8 million on Friday alone, including $7.5 million in Thursday previews. That's a record for the first weekend of December, demolishing the previous record of $24.2 million set by Tom Cruise's The Last Samurai back in 2003. It beat Zootopia 2 for the #1 spot, which was not expected. Disney's animated sequel was projected to hold strong in its second weekend with around $50 million, but FNAF 2 came in hot and took the crown. And here's the kicker. This is with a $36 million budget. The first Five Nights at Freddy's had a $20 million budget and opened to $80 million, but that had the advantage of releasing on Peacock simultaneously and dropping the weekend before Halloween. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is theatrical only, and its opening in early December, historically one of the deadest weekends of the year. The fact that it opened to $56 million during a notoriously slow period is a massive win for Blumhouse and Universal. This is now the second highest horror opening of 2025, only behind The Conjuring: Last Rites at $84 million. Globally, the movie's projected to hit around $70 million this weekend, with strong performances in Korea, Mexico, Brazil, and the UK. So yeah, financially, this is a hit, but the reviews tell a different story. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 currently sits at 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's based on over 60 reviews from critics. For context, the first movie got 33%, so the sequel is somehow worse in critics' eyes, and that first movie was already considered pretty bad. The reviews are brutal. Variety called it a supernatural video game slasher movie of astonishing clunky crudeness. The Hollywood Reporter said it's a wholly unnecessary sequel that should be skipped. The Guardian slammed writer Scott Cawthon, saying he's singularly unqualified to write towards human experiences. Ouch! IGN called it a bare minimum sequel that lacks enthusiasm. Discussing Film said it's nothing more than a cynical cash grab. Slash Film said it plays like a movie written by Reddit fan theories. The common complaints are convoluted, nonsensical plot with too many digressions and plot holes, weak scares that rely on loud jump scares instead of atmosphere or tension, bloated runtime that stretches a thin story to feature length, and too much fan service that means nothing to non-fans. Critics also pointed out that the movie is PG-13, which neuters the horror. The animatronics look great, but they're not scary because the violence is tame and sanitized. So, if you're going by critic consensus, this is one of the worst movies of the year, maybe of all time. But audiences, they couldn't disagree more. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has an 88% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. That's based on over 500 verified ratings. For comparison, the first movie got 86%, so fans actually like this one more than the original. This 75-point gap between critics and audiences is the largest in Rotten Tomatoes history, ever. No movie has had a bigger divide. For context, the first FNAF had a 53-point gap, Uncharted had a 48-point gap, and Warcraft had a 47-point gap. FNAF 2 blows all of them out of the water. So why do fans love it? Because it's a fan movie, made by fans, for fans. Scott Cawthon, the creator of the FNAF games, wrote the screenplay himself. No studio interference, no Hollywood rewrites, just pure FNAF lore translated to screen. Fans are praising the movie for more animatronics: Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, the puppet, Balloon Boy, and the return of Springtrap. More lore. The movie dives deep into the backstory of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the missing children. Better scares. Fans say it's scarier than the first movie, with more intense sequences and better atmosphere. Easter eggs everywhere. References to the games, hidden details, and setup for a third movie. One fan review said, "This is a fan's film, and it's done so artfully. The only gripe is the abrupt ending, but it sets up a perfect cliffhanger for the third movie." Another said, "Significantly more thrilling than the first, this shows that industries that care will listen to fans." So critics see a messy, boring horror movie. Fans see a love letter to a decade of lore. Alright, here's my take. Both sides are right. If you're not a FNAF fan, this movie is going to feel confusing, slow, and unsatisfying. The plot is convoluted. The pacing drags in the middle. The horror is weak because it's PG-13, and there's so much lore dumping that non-fans will be completely lost. But if you are a FNAF fan, this is exactly what you wanted. The animatronics are incredible. Jim Henson's Creature Shop outdid themselves. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, they all look terrifying. The puppet is genuinely creepy. And Springtrap's return as the main villain is chef's kiss. Mwah! Matthew Lillard is unhinged as William Afton, or Springtrap. He's clearly having fun, and his performance elevates every scene he's in. His line, "I always come back," hit the theater like a bomb. Fans went wild. The third act is genuinely intense. Once the animatronics go full killer mode, the movie picks up and delivers some solid horror sequences. And the lore is rich. If you've been following FNAF since 2014, seeing the missing children storyline, the origin of Freddy's, and the setup for the third movie is incredibly satisfying. However, the pacing is rough. The first hour drags. There's too much family drama between Mike, Abby, and Vanessa, and not enough animatronic horror. The plot is confusing. If you haven't played the games or watched lore videos on YouTube, you'll have no idea what's happening. Why is Vanessa in the hospital? Who are the new animatronics? What's the deal with the missing children? The movie doesn't explain enough for casual viewers. The horror is weak. It's PG-13, so there's no gore, minimal violence, and the scares rely on loud noises and jump scares. For a franchise built on dread and atmosphere, that's disappointing. And the ending is abrupt. It sets up a third movie, but it feels like the story was cut in half mid-climax. You don't get a satisfying resolution, just a cliffhanger. So why is the gap so massive? Because critics and fans are watching two completely different movies. Critics are watching a horror movie. They want scares, atmosphere, tension, and a coherent plot. They want something that works as a standalone film, and by those standards, FNAF 2 fails. Fans are watching a lore movie. They want Easter eggs, references, animatronic reveals, and setup for future films. They want to see the games brought to life, and by those standards, FNAF 2 succeeds. This is the same divide we saw with the first movie, but amplified. The first FNAF had a 53-point gap. This one has a 75-point gap. That's because Scott Cawthon doubled down on making this a fan movie. He didn't try to please critics. He didn't try to make it accessible to non-fans. He made the movie for the people who've been playing FNAF games since 2014. And commercially, that strategy worked. The movie opened to $56.5 million despite terrible reviews. Fans showed up in droves, dressed in costumes, and packed theaters. But critically, it's a disaster. And if you're not part of the fandom, you're gonna walk out confused and bored. So, where does FNAF 2 go from here? The opening weekend was huge, but the first movie dropped 76% in its second weekend, one of the steepest drops in box office history. It was massively front-loaded. Fans rushed to see it opening weekend, and then word spread that it wasn't great for non-fans, and ticket sales collapsed. Will FNAF 2 follow the same pattern? Probably. The movie has an 88% audience score, which is strong, but it's still PG-13 horror releasing in early December. Competition is about to heat up with holiday releases, and the movie's poor reviews will scare off casual audiences. That said, FNAF 2 has some advantages. It's theatrical only, no streaming option. It's releasing during the holidays, so families looking for entertainment might go see it. It has strong international performances in Korea, Brazil, and Mexico, and word of mouth among fans is super positive. If the movie can hold around 50 to 55% in its second weekend, it'll finish with around $140 to $160 million domestic and $250 to $300 million worldwide. That would make it a solid hit on a $36 million budget. But if it drops 70% plus, it'll struggle to cross $100 million domestic. Either way, the third movie is probably guaranteed. The first FNAF made $291 million worldwide. This one is tracking to make at least $200 million. Blumhouse isn't walking away from that. So, is FNAF 2 better than the first movie? Depends on what you value. If you care about pacing, the first movie is better. It's tighter, moves faster, and doesn't drag as much. If you care about scares, they're about equal. Both are PG-13, both rely on jump scares, neither's particularly scary. If you care about lore, FNAF 2 is way better. It dives deeper into the backstory, introduces more animatronics, and sets up future films. If you care about characters, the first movie is better. Mike's arc in the original was more focused. In the sequel, he feels sidelined by all the lore dumping. If you care about fan service, FNAF 2 wins by a landslide. More Easter eggs, more references, more animatronics, more springtrap. Personally, I think they're about equal in quality. Both are flawed, but enjoyable if you're a fan. Both fail if you're not. The first movie had the advantage of being new and surprising. The sequel has the advantage of going harder on fan service. So, bottom line, should you see Five Nights at Freddy's 2? If you're a FNAF fan, yes, absolutely. This is your movie. It's packed with lore, Easter eggs, animatronics, and setup for the third film. You'll love it. If you like the first movie, yes, but temper your expectations. It's more of the same. Same tone, same style, same issues. If you're not a FNAF fan, probably skip it. This movie assumes you know the games. If you don't, you'll be lost and bored. If you're a horror fan looking for scares, you can also skip it. This is PG-13 horror with weak scares and no atmosphere. The movie is critic-proof. It doesn't matter that it has a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Fans are showing up, and they're having a great time. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is the ultimate example of a fan movie. It made $56.5 million despite terrible reviews. It has the biggest critic-audience divide in Rotten Tomatoes history, and it's setting up a third movie that fans are already hyped for. Critics hate it, fans love it, and honestly, that's exactly what Scott Cawthon wanted. So yeah, if you're a FNAF fan, go see it in theaters. You'll have a blast. If you're not, save your money or wait for streaming. Either way, Freddy Fazbear isn't going anywhere. I always come back, right? Sorry. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments, are you team critics or team fans on this one? Either way, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.